Most sales leaders don't fail because they lack effort. What they fail for is because they've inherited a broken system a lot of the times. They've got unclear expectations and no real guidance on what is actually going to drive the revenue that they need to deliver. And my guest today has spent his entire career stepping into that chaos and turning it into the thing that we all dream about: repeatable, scalable performance. So, welcome to Leadership That Sells. This is a podcast that talks about the real conditions where leadership and sales actually work and when they don't, when they all break down. So I end up talking to founders, chief execs, sales leaders, and operators who've had to make the decisions when the effort was high, the pressure was real, the usual playbooks that we've got in our back pockets from that last job we did 10 years ago didn't quite fit or don't fit anymore. Now, the job is we're not here to try and trade slogans or, medics or stuff like that. What we're trying to do is surface patterns, things that consistently create momentum. Look at what it gets in the way and look at what experienced leaders eventually learn to stop doing. So if you are responsible for results and not just ideas, you're absolutely in the right place. And it then leaves me to say, Mike Manzi, thank you and very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Now, you've been dropped into multiple sales environments where you've got an expectation of immediate performance. And I think most of us have had that. It says, welcome on board. Can I have $10 million worth of pipeline, please? Yeah, nice. Okay. What's the toughest situation that you faced when that number was at risk? What did you get wrong first out the door?
Yeah, there was a company that I was working with where they were essentially at around like $500,000 in revenue, but they'd gotten a bunch of funding, and we had the core six group of sales reps who all had been doing things their way, six different ways, and showed success because it was inbound. So they also had a lot of entitlement around how they should be doing things. And I was brought in to say, we don't want the sales team doing six different things in six different ways, and we do not want them to have entitlement, and we're not going to be sending them 100,000 leads a day. So truly what they should be doing is about 10 times what they're doing today and fix it. So this is really challenging when you come into an organization as an outsider. I was also moving from New York to Boston. So there's a little bit of like who is this guy from New York? And I'm coming in as a VP when the previous person was the CRO.
Hmm.
So essentially, everybody was reporting to a lower level person. They all thought they were perfect. All they've been doing is winning because there were no goals in place, and all of them are doing things their own way. So, how do you take this team of people that are succeeding and say to them, basically, you're not succeeding, and we have to do things completely different from how you're doing it? And so I made the mistake that I think a lot of people make, which is I made a blanket approach
Hmm.
on everybody. And we had, like every organization, it's a bell curve. So we had our two people that were truly rock stars. And we had our two people that were really kind of duds, and then the two in the middle. So I have a playbook that I've used everywhere, which includes these pipeline reviews. And the pipeline reviews go one way typically. With the top rep, I ran the pipeline reviews that one way, and she didn't like the way that I was doing it. She felt like it was more too micromanaging.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I did was I at the previous company that I was at was a little bit too friendly, and so in this company I swung the pendulum a little bit too hard, and so I was a little bit too tough. And fast forward, I think it was maybe 6 months, our top rep left the company. And to this day, I know, and she said it at the time, that a major deciding factor was because of Mike was my manager. How disappointing to be like, we literally lost probably millions of dollars because of losing this rep. So what I did at that point, once I had that exit interview summary with HR and realized sort of how much of that I owned after letting my ego get to the side and say it wasn't me, was I really truly realized that I had been scared as a leader of a team. And so instead of using my personal skills and using my knowledge of how people work, I just leaned on system.
Hmm.
And I just said, whatever it is, I'll just do the system and run it exactly how it says that you've decided of how it should run, and don't take into consideration nuance, people, personalities, relationships, the importance to a company. So after that moment, what I did was I realized who on the team was so critical, and I started using a 9 box matrix
Mm.
where we look at potential on one level and performance on another level and try to see, do we retain this person, train this person, or remove this person? And the person who I didn't like the most in the team was the person who I needed to retain on the team. I think we often see our top performer as our most frustrating.
Toxic.
Yeah,
Toxic.
the top is often toxic. Now, in so what I then did was I spent a lot of time figuring out with every person on the team, and I do this to this day, what are some quick wins? What are things I can do to make deposits every week and every month, like get rid of a field, get rid of a policy, remove them from a meeting, make some new thing where people can't talk to you that are outside of our team, get rid of the annoying things for those sales reps so that later when I needed them to do something or I needed to ask for, let's say, what they would consider a favor, what I would consider an important change in the business, there's less pushback and it felt like this is an equal relationship. Not Mike tells me to do stuff, Mike never helps, but Mike helps and I need to keep up with how much he's helping with me by doing stuff for Mike or for the company or for the business just like in general. So ultimately we ended up getting that business to 7 million bucks a year in about a year and a half or 2 years. And we ended up retaining all of our top reps that were not toxic because after we got some more cash in the business, it then was okay for us to actually get rid of the toxic rep who truly wasn't going to be a team player. But in that first 6 months to a year, we actually needed the cash in the door more than anything else. So that's
Mm.
why that was a very tough situation, but I'm glad I got through it.
I like that, making deposits in advance of making the demands. I like the concept of you know you're going to go through a tough time. So in advance of doing that, you build the team. You build them up to the point where you've given them all life jackets. You've trained them in self-defense. You've fed them up because
Sure.
they're going to go through a rough time of starvation and violence. So you need to be ready for how you're going to deal with that. It speaks to the idea that people don't really care about what you say until they know that you actually care about them. That sort of thing. I like that. Mm. So now that then is quite an interesting position for you as someone who talks about playbooks and systems. So you turn around and you say, well, aye, about those playbooks and systems, kind of not really the thing. It's more like the people side of this here. And well, actually my whole piece is like leadership that sells. You want to sell, you know how to sell. You want to lead, you know how to lead. How do you do it in a context where it is the most measured, most under the microscoped part of any business? Because everybody's got a number in their head. Have you hit it? No. Then you're not succeeding. Have you hit it? Yes. Then you're succeeding. How did you hit it? They don't care. They do
Sure.
not give two craps how you did it,
Right.
as long as you did it. And there are quite literally two sorts of sales leaders, the ones that hit and the ones that miss. Guess which ones you want to be, ladies and gentlemen, right? So you position the ideas of playbooks and systems as the solution to sales leadership chaos. Okay. What is it that breaks? What is it specifically that breaks when people rely on those, as you just did, without understanding the underlying mechanics, not necessarily the emotional people side, but the underlying mechanics of a business? So you come into a new business and you're thinking, I know what this is. It's one of them. Playbook number 6B, apply. What what breaks?
Yep. So there's a difference between playbooks and tools. And this is where I think a lot of people get things wrong.
Oh, okay.
So the playbook is the general direction that we're heading and the avenues that we want to take to get there. The tools are the actual things that we're doing. So, for example, the playbook is, let's say, how do I forecast? And when I think of forecasting, I believe that there's a public forecast, there's a personal forecast, and there's a professional forecast. So those are the three avenues I want to go down. Now, the tools I use are pipeline reviews, coaches room meetings, and forecast categories. Now, if I go to every organization and I say I have to use this pipeline review, I have to use this forecast category, I have to use this coaches room, it's not going to work. If I think of those tools as a playbook, I'm going to try to insert yesterday's stuff into today's situation. This house's design into this house's world. It
Mm,
doesn't work. But when you can zoom out and go, hey, what I'm recognizing here is that when it comes to, in this example, forecasting, I realize that there are some pressures that make you have a different public forecast than more of a private or personal forecast. There's a private forecast that you can give by understanding each of your deals. And there's a bit of a pressure that make forces with forecast category that forces you to decide, is this deal going to come in or not going to come in? And it's really all of those things that paint this picture. But at a different company, I maybe wouldn't use coach's room. I maybe wouldn't use pipeline review. I maybe wouldn't use forecast category, but I would use a different form of a public, a private, or public, a personal, in a private forecast. And I would just use different tools to do that. So I think where people get stuck is they use the tools as their playbook as opposed to the high level understanding of a playbook. When you first start out, what you're doing is you're stealing tools. I always call people duct tape sales managers. You are duct taping tools from your last boss, your previous boss from 3 years ago, the LinkedIn message that you saw that made you feel insecure, the thing that your boss told you to do because they just listened to some podcast and they said you got to do this. And you're duct taping all of this together, but never actually creating a system because like when you're 8 and you're learning to play a sport, you know, I swing, I run, I throw, but you don't know why you're doing any of those items. As you get more tenured and you start to see why things work and you can see the patterns, that's when you realize, oh, it's not the throwing that does it. It's not the pipeline review that does it. It's the inspection of these certain questions in a private setting. So that could be done in a variety of ways. It's the public pressure, which could be a leaderboard, could be an email, doesn't have to be a meeting. It's then that you can actually have a playbook versus tools. And that's when things break and when you don't do that.
I like that playbook versus tool. This it speaks to, I think, um, it's almost like how you can structure or talk about how you lead in general. I like talking about curling. It's the only sport that Scotland is any good at in the Winter Olympics. Curling is where they throw the stones across the ice, you know,
Sure.
right? So I like to think that um, the job, your leadership job, is you do all the training, you do all the positioning, but the performance piece, because sales is a performance profession, right? The
Totally.
performance piece is where you are the wee guy with the brush and you're running ahead of them. You might call it a quarterback in the US. I'm sorry, I don't know the
Sure.
parlance, but you're
Sure.
ahead of the curling stone and you're sweeping everything out of the way. But what you've done is you've set the guidelines. This is the direction we're going in. No further than this, no further than that. Okay. That is the way we're going. I've done my best to level the playing field as much as I can and given you the right weights and trained you up as much as we can, but it's up to you to send them on their way.
Right. And in your analogy, imagine if instead of having that as your thought process is I use the X1 280 brush.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, on this ice, we need the X2 340.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
so your idea of just I must use this brush is actually incorrect.
Hmm.
Your idea should be I need to move things out of your way. I need to always be ahead
That's
of
it.
you, right?
That's it.
But not I need this brush. Today we use that brush, tomorrow we use a different brush.
That's it. I love that. That's quite profound. I think as you've got
My first profound curling analogy. Perfect.
you made a profound curling analogy, Mike. It's a thing.
Sweet.
It's a gift that we give everybody who comes on this podcast is a profound curling
Amazing.
analogy.
Thank you very much.
So you are. I think you're paying attention to context. You're paying attention to the people you're working for, the environment you're finding yourself in, the situation that's around you, and trying to find the best tool for the job.
That's
Best
it.
tool for the job.
So if I could give someone advice as it relates to creating playbooks,
Yeah.
what we want to do, and obviously with people in my program, we've got a playbook for all of these different things. But really, what you want to do is you want to think about all the things you've done. Like if you could write out all the things that you've done, write out all of the success that you've had, which ones actually succeeded, and then zoom out to figure out what are the 2 or 3 categories of things that I'm doing here. For example, I thought through all the different things I've done to create a great culture. a high performance culture on a team. And then I could look at that and say, you know what this really is? This really is, I've shown people that I care. I've shown people it's about numbers, and I've shown people that I'm going to help them. Those three things are my buckets. Now, I can do those in 10,000 different ways in 10,000 different companies, but I know that if I were to grade myself, I want to look at those three categories to know if I'm doing well. And if I'm interviewing for a job, I want to be able to say I have these categories, I have this playbook that I want to follow. It also helps me when I'm in a job to dig to the bottom of the barrel as opposed to think, hey, how do I become better as a sales manager? I can look at those three categories and go, how can I be better as it relates to showing them I care, showing them I can help them. So that high level view categories of what you've done is what's going to help you craft a playbook so you can more easily insert your tools and become more effective.
Okay. So you're looking at the category or the effective moment of leverage that you've got rather than the activity that you're trying to perform here. And I
Well
think
said.
that splits out what I would say is the signal from the noise. Because if you think most most execs, most investors, whatever, they don't really care what you do, right? It's like they don't really care as long as you hit the number. Good for you. Well done. How did you do it? La 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 la. Not listening. Don't care.
All right, don't care.
But in order to do that, you have to then make those high leverage decisions. So you've had a number of different roles here. So you've been a time doctor, you were workable, you had these interesting companies. What were the highest leverage decisions that actually moved the needle?
I'm going to tell you a decision that I made that I have now used this microcosm, if that's what it's called,
Mm.
to take to every company to find this high leverage decision. Let me say that again. Let me let me tell you the decision I made in this company and how I'm now using that decision as a formula to succeed in every company that I've been at thereafter and why I've been able to be a fractional VP, 100 plus times now. What I did was I looked at every variable possible that I thought could have an impact on win rate and deal size. So we looked at how big the deal ended up being, who brought the deal to us, how big the company was, how much revenue the company did, how many people started doing a trial, how many people in the trial continued going on with the trial, so on and so forth, how many dials we made, everything. And I cross-referenced those variables against each other to say, well, what was our win rate when it was a small company and our deal size was under X, a big company and our deal size was under X, right? So I cross-referenced all these things, pulled up 100 pivot tables to see three pieces of information. How many leads did we get or generate? How many customers did we close? And how many dollars did we close those customers for? When I do that, I now know the win rate and the deal size of every variation. Now, there's one more step I need to take here that is, I guarantee, things that nobody in your audience is doing today because I made it up, but you guys probably have some version of this, which is I created a 100 score. A 100 score is 100 times your win rate times your deal size. And I did this because if I look at what is our win rate and deal size for big customers? And, or sorry, how much revenue do we get from big customers? $1 million. How much revenue do we get from small customers? $100,000. Big customers wins. But what if I told you that we got 10,000 leads for big customers and we got 100 leads for little customers? Then suddenly you realize, well, wait a second. How did we only make $1 million from 10,000 leads and we made $100,000 from 100 leads? I actually think that there might be an issue here. Maybe the small leads are better. We just didn't happen to get as many of them. That we put together, we had 100 leads. 100 leads times win rate times deal size spits out how much money would we have made had we had 100 leads in this category. So once you see that, you can stack rank which ones are the best and which ones are the worst. And so with this one company in particular, what we found when we did this was if we got 10 people into a trial in the first week, our win rate was over 87%. It was like 88% was our win rate. And all the other ones were variations of 30, 40, 50%. We didn't have this visibility at first because we just thought, oh, we have like I think it was like a 37% win rate. So at that moment, I was like, okay, everything we do is around 10 people getting in the trial. That's all we're doing. We put it on the website. We gave SDRs a coupon code. If you can get them to use your coupon code, if they sign up within a week and get 7 people in the trial, they get 10% off. We reversed the demo. So instead of us doing the demo and sharing our screen, we had the customer share the demo on their screen, and we drew on their screen by doing things like, hey, click here and actually add your first person. We after the first call, instead of having like, hey, we'll follow up in 3 days, we had a 1 week check-in, a 10-day check-in, and a 2 week check-in. And 1 week check-in was just like, hey, you don't have everybody in there yet. 10-day check-in was, hey, we still need to get a couple more people in there. And the 2 week check-in was, holy cow, did you see what you just, uncovered? And our win rate went from something like 30 something percent to 67 or 68%
Nice.
in a matter of 30 days. So we effectively doubled the effectiveness of the sales team in 30 days by making really one strategic change. And now every organization I go to and every single person I coach, I try to find what is that outlier variable that's hidden that we can exploit if we had access to it.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. The 100 score, I like that. So number of leads, number of opportunities times deal size times win rate. That's good. Do you know if you take that and then you divide that by your sales cycle length, you end up with the sales velocity, right?
Sure,
You end up with your days, you end up with the revenue per day. So you've got that as a baseline, which is impacting when you've discovered that one lever that's actually going to impact things. And then so that then gives you, okay, so that's a really nice metric. I like that, the 100 score.
sure.
Oh,
Steal it.
steal it, stolen, stolen. If we go to your playbook starter kit, officialsalestips.com, what do we get?
Yeah, so you're going to get the true starter kit that I give to everybody and that I use personally. This is not here's cool ideas or here's a general overview. This is here's the exact template to use. So the most important one you're going to get is the scorecard. Right now, most people use as a dashboard, and the dashboard shows you where you are. Maybe you're fancy and have a gas gauge here or there. Half the time it's out of date. Half the time it doesn't show you everything you need, and you have four dashboards. And this one called final, actual one. This one for real. So what this does is it just says it puts in your goal, you put in your actuals, it spits out your percent to quota. Nice and simple, but it includes not only your revenue goal, it includes your win rate goal, your deal size goal, your number of deals goal, your activities goal, your contacts goal, your contact to opportunity rate, your activity to opportunity rate, so that when you are going, oh shoot, we're missing our number, you're not having to make up some crazy story to your boss about why it's A, not your fault, and B, not going to happen again. You can actually look at the numbers and say, hey, I'm seeing right here where the failure is. It's in contact to activity rate, or sorry, contact to deal creation rate or activity to deal creation rate. This basically gives you a magnifying glass on every area of the pipeline to diagnose the problem without you having to go listen to 10,000 calls and spend $100 talking to your sales team. That's the critical bit. The other bit that you get is the managing, and the third bit is the people. So on the managing of people, if you run your one-on-ones right, which I know makes everybody's eye roll, but I have a whole system for one-on-ones, and I have probably all my I usually get about $5 million, 5 million views a month, and most of them end up talking about my one-on-ones. You want to get this correct, and there's the framework for running it. The templates actually put the information in that you do need to put in. None of it's that hard. It's all normal stuff. But this is what getting the one-on-one right is what creates consistency and reinforces the culture so that people actually work hard for you all the time versus sometime. And the third thing is the people. We all know this. Like a lot of times you go, we had a great month or a great year. Why? You say because of all your training and all of your great stuff that you did, but you're like, it was Timmy. Timmy carried the team. So what we have here is we want to make sure we have the best people. So I give you my exact hiring scorecard, which gives you a weighting on every question you should be asking. So you can see a score for every single person. It gives you the exercise you have to give them to actually test that. Are they good at their job or are they just charismatic? And it gives you all the comp plan that you want to provide these people with accelerators and everything else to make sure that they're motivated. So truly, how do I bring a team in? How do I manage them once they're in? And how do I track all the numbers is all included in this. And it's $9. That way you guys can get started, see results, and start to see how good you can run a sales team when you run it through the primary heartbeat of a playbook.
I think you've got a website title there. I mean, I like the one you've got. Now that's pretty good. You know, it's official sales tips. But I think that the $9 playbook, that's snazzy. You can have that for free.
I'll take that. Stolen.
Last question for you, because we need to wrap this up.
Sure.
How do you know when a sales problem is in fact your problem, a leadership problem, rather than a systems problem?
Well, so the first thing I like to do when I'm coming to an org is I want to fix the systems and see what things actually can be resolved from a will or skill perspective. So, of course, anytime you go into an organization, the first problem that we have is it's stupid that we have these meetings. It's stupid that we have to fill out the CRM this way. It's stupid that the CS team requires us to do these things. And the sales team tells you these are all problems. If only these things were fixed, then I could run to the moon. Now, what I love about getting this information is these are my quick wins. So in
Yeah.
the first 90 days, I am just driving through quick wins for the team. I'm talking to CS, I'm canceling meetings, I'm changing systems. Now for the sales team, this is just to let them know I got your back. So they want to work hard for me. But the other thing is all this stuff is out of your way now. So there are no more excuses. So once I've gotten rid of the system problem for the most part, that's when I know that we can move to in the other direction. And it's truly going to be my fault if it's a systems issue. The next thing I do is I watch that 100 score, like I mentioned, over time. If the number of leads is down, my revenue will go down. So is that my fault or is it marketing's fault? This is where you yell at marketing. If let's say you're a chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, if revenue goes down, but it's not the sales team, it's CS's churn, is that your fault? Well, no, that's kind of CS. But when you look at the 100 score, this is to say, are we generating, forget the number of leads, especially if we're getting inbound leads. This is just win rate and deal size. And if the win rate and deal size is going up, and a 100 score, therefore, is going up, I know the effectiveness of the team is going up, regardless of systems or anything else. So I'm scouring that, or I'm staring at that number to know, is this a will issue, meaning the number is going up, the 100 score is going up, but we're not getting more revenue, so we're not getting enough stuff through the pipeline, or is it a skill issue? Even though we might be getting more leads or getting more efficient from a systems perspective, we're not seeing the win rate and deal size go up. So that's how I identify if it's pretty much let's call it my fault or not my fault. Though at the end of the day, of course, everything is your fault. You need to either create more relationships across the org to solve other departments,
There
or within your department to help them do better.
you go. Mike, lastly then, if you had 1,000 billboards and the biggest Sharpie you could imagine,
Sure.
what's the one message you would leave with all these poor sods who have this majestic job of trying to lead the ballerinas and opera singers that are most of our sales team?
I think what I would say is on your forehead, it says in flashing lights, I can fire you. And don't forget that. And I say this because what every manager I work with, and when I bring up the idea of feedback, they're either not giving feedback because they're afraid because they see that sign and they don't realize that sign gives them power, or they don't know that sign exists. And
Mm.
so they are rude or a little bit tactless when it comes to giving feedback, and this causes people to run away from them. But if you can recognize, like, I have this power of authority given to me implicitly, which means I can push people, but also I have this power that can hurt people. So you don't want to overuse it. That will allow you to be a really good manager. So yeah, a big picture of someone that says I can fire you on my forehead, so that you treat people appropriately, both respecting their future performance and helping them be the best version, and also respecting who they are as human beings and not overusing your power.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility.
Indeed.
And indeed, Mike Manzi, thank you very much indeed for joining
Thank
us.
you, Paul.